Thank you to Team Europe for the invitation to moderating this session, Unlocking Wind Energy Value Chains in Africa, with experiences from South Africa and the European Union. My name is Tobias Elling-Rehfeldt. I'm the Danish ambassador to South Africa. Now, the starting point for the discussion in this session is the fact that renewable energy sources now for a number of years have been cheaper to build and run than new build fossil fuel plants. Since 2014, more than 328 gigawatt of new wind capacity has been added to national electricity grids worldwide. Now in Denmark, we're proud to be among the world leading countries in wind energy generation, as well as in production, research and development of wind energy technology. About 50% of our electricity currently produced in Denmark is generated by wind, and we expect that number to increase to 85% within the next 15 years. But of course, this is only the beginning. While the technology is rapidly becoming both cheaper and more advanced, the natural potential for further expansion is enormous. Just here on the African continent, a 2020 IFC study found that 16 countries have technical wind potentials of more than 1,000 gigawatt. And I would argue that nowhere is the potential bigger than here in South Africa. And policies are starting to reflect this. The 2019 South Africa Integrated Resource Plan allocated the construction of 14.4 gigawatt of new wind capacity, leading up to 2030, an impressive new capacity of 1.6 gigawatt per annum. But if South Africa and other countries on the continent are to be successful with the green energy transition, supply chain management is key, and structural changes must be addressed to unlock the full potential of this transition. These challenges include A, conducive national policies and legislative environment, B, the right technology, and C, local skills for both production, management, and service. Or to put it more plainly, how do we facilitate the renewable energy sector further across Africa, and what is needed in terms of unlocking the market potential and mitigating bottlenecks and barriers in market entry and procurement processes? In this session, we will focus on some of these challenges. So let's engage further on this topic. Allow me to introduce the panel to discuss the topic today of unlocking wind energy value chains in Africa. And we look very much forward to you bringing in your experiences and your expertise as wind energy professionals. Our first panelist today will be Mr. Maximilian Jarrett. He has over 30 years of professional experience in the field of international economic affairs. In his current role as Africa Program Manager at the International Energy Agency, he helps to expand the International Energy Agency's reach and coordinate its work as it deepens its engagement across the African continent. He most recently served as director in charge of the Geneva-based Africa Progress Panel. And prior to that, he worked for a decade with the Economic Commission of Africa, coordinating programs and initiatives with African states, as well as the African Union and African Development Bank. So welcome, Maximilian. I'll give the floor to you. And maybe just to start off the discussion, how do you see the big picture as far as which essential actions are needed to accelerate clean energy transition in Africa today? And what are really the essential policy priorities that we need to boost renewables in Africa?
Thank you very much, Tobias. And it's really a great pleasure to be here with you all. And as you said, I speak, I'm not a wind expert, not a specialist, but I can speak about the broader global and regional context, how we see things at IEA. And as our executive director said in a commentary that was published in the Financial Times at the start of the year, he is more optimistic than ever about the world's ability to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. However, he stressed that nothing short of a total transformation of our energy infrastructure is required. And that's going to be a worldwide undertaking of unprecedented speed and scale. And it's one that calls for decisive action over the next decade, i.e. the next 10 years. And Africa is no exception. And what he was saying was in the context of a discussion we had with African energy ministers and IEA ministers in November, where they really reached agreement on some key action points that I think are very critical to share in this discussion today. First, the energy ministers agreed on the absolutely critical role of the energy sector to reinvigorate economic growth and to power Africa's economic transformation. However, there's certain things that are needed to ensure that the Africa's energy sector is actually fit for purpose to do just that. One involves scaling up investments and also deploying resources into that over the next 3 years in the wake of COVID. Now, there's also a need for more sustained and more enhanced global partnership in order to basically assist Africa and partner with Africa to move this agenda forward and to step up the pace towards universal access to electricity and modern cooking in Africa. The focus must remain on the plans to achieve the SDGs. And then the third, it's a whole issue of, which I think is very critical to this discussion today as well, about financing and how one actually deploys the resources, the investments that are needed. We have found in our last Africa Energy Outlook, which came out in 2019, that up to date, the policy and investment plans that have been on the table have been insufficient to meet the modern energy needs of Africa's population. And the kind of challenges that Africa still faces in obtaining required finance there's so many of them, there's a range of them, and much more needs to be done to basically address that. These challenges include reduced financing flows to the continent, a lack of fiscal space, and also recently in the wake of COVID, a slowdown in new investments in the energy sector, and also at the same time, increasing rates of the cost of borrowing. And all that really needs to be addressed if we're going to be able to get the resources into renewables, into wind, to ensure that that can be scaled up in the way that we want to see it. And then finally, I think that it's very important, as you said, Tobias, that the African governments have to do as much as possible to get the enabling environment and the regulatory and policy environment right, to enable those entrepreneurs in wind to step into the space, to enable that finance from outside or even inside African countries that maybe could be more deployed into renewables, to play the role that it needs to, because Africa's own financial sector has an absolutely critical role to play to sustain the long-term financing needs of Africa's energy projects. And then finally, I just want to say that renewables is not just how do I say this? It is not a marginal issue anymore in Africa. It has to be front and center in terms of the future energy systems that we want to build. And in IEA's last Energy Outlook in 2019, we made the case that renewables play a leading role in meeting the increasing demands of Africa's populations and the growth of Africa's economies over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And wind power, which we're focusing on today, also plays within that an increasingly rapid role in several countries that benefit from high quality wind resources, notably Ethiopia, Kenya, Senegal, and South Africa. And let me just stop there, but I think that's kind of put things on the table in terms of how we see things at IEA. We're optimistic, but a lot needs to be done to get the money in place, to get the governance in place to enable these the renewables to scale up, and especially wind and solar.
Thank you very much, Maximilian. If I can just follow up on your presentation here. So, two things that steps out. One, we have to scale up the investments. What are the main challenges here? Are investors willing and ready to invest into renewable energies here on the African continent, or are there still a little bit of hesitation on that front? And secondly, you talked about the policy enabling, especially here in South Africa. There's still a lot of love for old coal-fired power plants, and so how do we address that policy and decision really on going in this new green direction?
Well, it's a key issues of political economy here. And when you talk about political economy, you talk about incentives and disincentives. So first, regarding the financing, the global financial system, and even within Africa, it's not the lack of money, but money is very shy and money can be very scared. So one has to do as much as possible to ensure that the environment is in place that makes the financiers feel that, if they're going to go into these renewables, that they'll be able to get the returns on their investment. And so it's key and that's where the policymakers are critical to that, to making sure that they get for example, in South Africa, get the policy environment right, so that people know that by investing in this, the tariffs will be right. They'll be able to basically get their money back and make a profit. That's what we need, And then secondly, regarding South Africa and coal, I mean, that's a deep issue of political economy. And it's not just about tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. It's a generational change, and transitions hurt and transitions take time, but transitions should lead to transformations which have to happen. I always think of the caterpillar and the butterfly. While it's still a caterpillar, it can be painful and ugly as it's getting out of that. But eventually, if it keeps going, it will fly. And I'm hopeful that South Africa, the political economy in South Africa, all the stakeholders who have to all be involved to make sure it's a just transition, get to a point where they see that there is a win-win. And we get to that, then I'm sure that the policy environment will be in place to enable that transition from coal, decarbonization of the South African energy sector, and for South Africa's economy also, based on energy, new, cleaner energy, to fly.
Thank you very much, Maximilian. Let's hope it will fly. And one of the companies that will have to make it fly is our next panelist, Louise Poulsen. Louise Poulsen is the managing director of Vestas here in South Africa. She's previously worked as the senior project manager of GE South Africa, as well as the Industrial Development Corporation. And Louise, I would like to bring you in here because following up on Maximilian's arguments, I mean, what is really seen from your perspective the status of wind power generation on the African continent? What is your outlook when you look into the African market and the South African market as Vestas?
Thank you, Ambassador, for the introduction, and colleagues for the panel. I think Vestas has had a very positive outlook with respect to our footprint in South Africa. Certainly, we've been here since 2002. Ambassador, as you know well, being from Denmark yourself and Vestas being a Danish company, we have 530 installed megawatts in South Africa currently. We have put in a number of bids in the emergency round, and to Maximilian's point, we remain positive that the right policy environment exists in South Africa. Of course, there have been some delays, and those cannot always be anticipated, but we remain positive that recent announcements by the President of South Africa, as well as the CEO of Eskom, have underpinned an environment in which we look forward to still having a very long participation in the economy. Just for everybody's information, if we think about Vestas's investment in South Africa, it's an approximate 10.9 billion rand that we've invested into the South African economy, with 30% of the market share. Ambassador, as you well know, Vestas has a very strong footprint on the African continent. We have projects in Egypt, Kenya, Mauritius, Zambia, Senegal, Cape Verde, and Morocco. And I think that is really a testimony to how we have viewed emerging market economies. We have looked at them very strategically. When we consider the activity in the rest of the world, we think there's still a lot, of course, to be done in Africa because of the very young population who will still need connectivity moving forward. So we remain very positive, not only about South Africa, but about the continent as a whole. I think the Africa Free Trade Agreement that was effected from the 1st of January also will be very important for the sector. There are a lot of opportunities. We as Vestas have been investigating how we can participate actively in that. And of course, to the point that you made earlier, Ambassador, I think organizations like Saratech, which I'm sure Claude will talk much more to, have become very important for us because we need the skills and we need the people on the ground who can help us to do the installations. And we, as Vestas, obviously, we prefer to have a lasting legacy. And part of that has been our commitment to localization. So I think overall, we're very positive about Africa, and our footprint currently talks to that.
Thank you very much, Louise. And I think it's clear that one of the concerns when you do that change, that green transition from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more renewable-based economy, is a lot of jobs will be in the mix here. Previous, coal mine workers, other in the coal mine industry, other who used to work in the old sort of economy will have to find new jobs. So I think there's a lot of political discussions on how much job creation is actually in this change to renewable energies. Can you speak to that a little bit? You know, what will it mean, seen from your perspective, on the issues of job creations and skills development?
So, you know, Ambassador, one of the things that I think South Africa has done very well has been to entrench a policy environment which is quite mature already through the combination of the BE code scorecard and the overlap with the economic development scorecard that exists for the auctions that we all participate in. And if we look at that, I think everybody on this panel can speak about the need for job creation and also skills transfer, which is very important. And those are critical conversations that we know organized labor has been having with the government of South Africa. They've been having these conversations with Eskom, and it is a very real concern. As you mentioned, we have a baseload of coal, and in South Africa, we've had a situation historically where coal mines are typically located next to coal-fired power plants. I think there is, through the REDS arrangement also, which we all know well, the REDS were identified by the CSIR, the renewable economic zones. It's a bit of a tongue twister. And through that, they have also looked at circular economy models and how to make sure that we are engaging with the communities proactively to look at alternative employment opportunities. And I think, to your point, absolutely, we need to be thinking very innovatively about how we address those situations.
Thank you very much, Louise. I think we'll leave you for now and move on to the next panelist, Claude. Claude Cogil from Saretec. You are the project manager, or currently the acting director of Saretec, tasked with the development of 21 SPVT technical mentors to be stationed at the 7 TVET colleges around the country over the next 3 years, as part of the implementation of the solar photovoltaic technician qualification. And I understand you also oversee the infrastructure development of the campuses presenting the SPVT program. So, Claude, maybe I can just leave the floor to you also with these discussions about the development of the necessary skills, technical skills that are locally in order to make this transition happen. And, you know, maybe you can talk a little bit about the work you're doing at the Saretec and what is necessary to create these local skills that are so necessary to make the change.
Folks, thank you. We're very proud to be associated with the wind energy community as Saretec. Obviously, that's part of our mandate. And when Saretec was birthed 8 years ago, it was centered around the fact that renewable energy was going to be the preeminent factor within the South African economy. And we needed to have some sort of infrastructure and interface to be able to enable that process, so that we had people coming in to develop wind farms, but then there needs to be a maintenance, a support, a mechanism that flows out of that. The reality is that, you know, there's many technicians that are required in the South African economy today to be able to support the wind, even just the amount that we have on the table at the moment. We've just developed, we've had up to the end of last year, we've had about 72 plus 24, 96 wind turbine service technicians developed at Saretec as qualified wind turbine service technicians. We're proud of that fact. And what's even greater in terms of the achievement is the fact that many of those are women. And, you know, we're shifting away from the paradigm of men only being able to do these jobs. And so that's a big feather in our cap from that perspective. However, we are also cognizant of the fact that we haven't even scraped the tip of the iceberg, because there's so much required, so many technologies, so many technical expertise that's required to support the industry, that we are in the process of ramping up a whole lot of processes from a Saretec perspective to be able to enable that. One of the key things we've done just recently is we've had the wind turbine service technician qualification accredited by the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, which means that anybody who comes into the program gets a certified qualification and which is recognized internationally. So that's the first thing that we've managed to achieve at the latter part of last year, and we're excited about that. But at the same time, we've realized that SARITEC in itself is not able to ramp up the services required to meet industry demands. Over the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a need for about 150 wind turbine service technicians per year to be developed. And so what we are busy doing, and one of the prime roles that I'm playing at the moment, is to build relationships with TVET colleges around the country. As I have done with the solar photovoltaic program, we're doing the same with the wind turbine program. So I'm going to colleges to see what their capacity is to be able to host learners for the wind turbine qualification under the guidance and accreditation of SARITEC, but also then we'll enhance them to be able to apply for the accreditation as providers at some point after the association has started. So what we are trying to do is to make a footprint more relevant across the country and not just localized within Cape Town, but we wanting to move it into the Eastern Cape, into the Free State, in Gauteng, even Northern Cape, and that's one of the big factors that we're busy engaging at the moment. So we certainly see the need to move the development of skills as a very, very serious priority. We also in talk with, obviously, with the Wind Energy Association, and we, as Louise has mentioned, we have a wonderful partnership with Vestas. We've worked with Vestas over the last 5 years, and Vestas has been central to establishing the base that SARITEC has been working from at the moment. So I just want to give recognition to that, and especially to you, sir, because you are a Danish person and Vestas is from Denmark. So there you go.
Thanks a lot. Unfortunately, I know nothing about setting up windmills, so we need South African technicians to do that. But what I do pick up is when I talk to young South Africans, there's a real interest in this green transition, and it creates deep emotions, and people really want to be engaged. Do you feel that as well? Do you feel that young South Africans see this as a career path, something that will build a future for them if they take this education?
I must tell you that I think that what we're finding out there, a lot of young people who come through the TVET system in mechanical engineering, millwright, electrician jobs, and then after a while they hear about wind turbines, they heard about renewable energy, and they have an interest in it. So what we've done is we've worked towards RPL, which is giving them recognition of prior learning in parts of their qualification, and then demarcating them towards the wind energy and the renewable energy space. And that's worked quite well. So a lot of the candidates who have graduated from us have had some training in other mechanical and or electrical disciplines, but we've been able to migrate them towards the wind energy renewable space. And that's been very successful from a SARITEC perspective. And so we're keeping our eyes very much on where the youngsters have an affinity for renewable energy. The one thing that has been lacking in South Africa is about communication, about the advocacy around renewable energy. And I think that's been ramped up more and more. And after the state president's announcement at the SONA conference, he was quite clear about the fact that that's the journey we're going to be taking. And so in order for us to meet the demand of the growing industry, we're going to have to ramp up our resources to support that.
Thank you very much, Claude. Yes, of course, even if we have all the investments, even if we have all the right policies, if we don't have the technicians, then Absolutely. We're not moving very far. So thank you very much. Thanks, Claude. Let me move on now to our next panelist, Mr. Jannik Wynand, the Managing Director of Siemens Gamesa, South Africa since 2015, based in Johannesburg. And Jannik, you've been working in the wind industry for the past 13 years, having held various management positions. And of course, now you're serving as a board member of the South African Wind Energy Association. So as I leave the floor to you, being a major player in this field as well, Jannik, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what have you achieved so far in South Africa? What are your experiences sort of across the continent? And do you see some of the same bottlenecks that we heard about before on policy, investments, and so on? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Tobias. It's an honor to be on this panel today. Well, first of all, let's take the continent perspective. Siemens Gamesa is very much connected to the continent. Fortunately, we are in a good position to be clear market leader in the continent. Also, the front runners in terms of industrialization with the blade factory we have constructed in Morocco. Also in South Africa, we are very dedicated to building up a local value chain. My company has joined the country long time before I thought about renewable energy, or also long time before wind turbines were even invented. I think back the days more talking about windmills. Yeah, with about 800 megawatt in South Africa, we have built up quite a sizable organization, and I'm proud to say that despite me being a German, moved to South Africa in 2015, the rest of my team is completely South African, which is also, of course, due to the activities of Claude, of Saratech, but obviously also because of the investment in the countries through IPPs who were attracted by the renewable energy program in South Africa, which has been perceived as being very successful and has been proven to attract those investments which are important, to pull the industry forward. So we are very much looking forward to where the industry can go. We are very much excited about the Integrated Resource Plan 2019. Also, the latest announcements of the presidency and the Department of Mining and Energy are very, very positive. We sincerely hope that the journey will continue. Specifically because during the first rounds of the renewable energy program, we tried to increase our supply chain footprint in South Africa. Partially in the towers, which now at least there's one strong tower manufacturer, GRI, who has retained in the country and can produce wind towers with a very high quality. Also, I'm strongly believing that there will be additional investments into the country in this field, and also in terms of resources and skills. I mean, resources on the logistics side, for instance, installation, transportation, and so on. We were positively experiencing the entrepreneurial spirit and the drive of South African companies. That all of those areas we could localize, and also the skills. And I think that's South Africa, for instance, gives us all the skills we need to run our operations in the country on a high quality, highly professional level. So that was a positive experience. And you were talking, and Maximilian was already telling us about scaling up the investments. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business case for every investor to invest in a country and in a continent. Obviously, we all know that South Africa has all the potential, especially in terms of renewable energy. You mentioned also Maximilian mentioned some countries in South Africa who have a higher wind power potential, and definitely South Africa is there at the forefront with a lot of free, beautiful land with a very high wind potential. So we are very happy to see that. Yeah, and we hope that through the continuation of the renewable energy program, those additional investments, including further industrialization, will come to the country. Definitely, we will support together with the industry, with the South African Wind Energy Association. I know that Vestas is also on board, and our competitors are also dedicated to the country. Also have invested in hybrid or concrete tower solutions, and yeah, I'm hopeful that this industry will generate many more jobs, as it has already done up to today.
Thanks a lot, Jannik. I think we all know that here in South Africa, the renewable energy market were quite quiet for a few years. There was a lot of political discussion, and we were all waiting for the integrated resource plan that came out, and luckily is very ambitious, even on a global scale. But that being said, if you look at other markets, the United States, China, and others, those are markets where many more wind turbines are being installed as we speak, and we're still waiting for the next round here in South Africa. So, but the fact that the president goes in and put this so high on his agenda, the fact that we have an integrated resource plan, can you feel international investors taking note of this? Can you feel that there is a renewed interest in investing into the renewable energy market in South Africa?
Yeah, thank you, Tobias. I mean, obviously, the impasse in South Africa has not supported us a lot to attract new investments. But anyhow, we were busy during these times as well to execute wind projects. That means that we were able to attract at least supporting industries who are part of executing those projects, also in the service area. I can confirm that we as an industry are in discussion with international investors who definitely have an eye on the industry potential and a big interest also to invest once, of course, the demand is coming. But so the interest is there, the motivation is there. I had a lot of meetings this week also, for instance, having you as ambassador of beautiful Denmark today, supporting us here in this panel. Yesterday I had a meeting with EKF, so the Danish Export Credit Fund, who are extremely interested to invest in South Africa and the projects and just waiting for the projects to come. They have reassured us their motivation, but so has also the Spanish government, so have different tower manufacturers. So definitely the motivation is there, the interest is there, the demand is there. I mean, living in South Africa, everyone knows that we need power, and that the industry is there to deliver, and will also bring the required investments.
Thanks a lot, Jannik. No, I can just confirm that we certainly also feel that at the Danish embassy that with all the changes happening, there's a renewed interest from investors from Europe and otherwhere, from Denmark, and really looking at this market, seeing a huge potential here. So I think that is, of course, a motivating factor for getting rid of the last obstacles into those sort of investments. So I can confirm that. But thanks a lot, Jannik. I think with that, we'll move on speedily to our fifth and final panelist, Mr. Andrea Gattini. You are the head of the Business Development Africa and ME for Enel Green Power. You have a master in mechanical engineering, more than 17 years experience in different renewable technologies and geographies. And you are also a strong believer in the potential of the African renewable energy market. And so, Andrea, I will leave the floor to you here in the final round of the presentations, and maybe also for you to speak a little bit about your experiences in what are the supply risks, supply chain risks, and how can these be mitigated, seen from your perspective. So over to you, Andrea.
Good morning. Good morning to everybody. So first of all, thanks for the introduction, Ambassador. So being part of Enel is a leading operator in the market, and as you know, has committed strongly of Enel is coming from renewable, and there is a huge ambition to substantially improve the installation of renewable 3 times in the next 10 years. We are present in 28 countries. So far, we are managing 49 gigawatt worldwide, more or less 12 gigawatt wind. In South Africa, we are a leading operator, 1.2 gigawatt of renewable capacity secured through the REAP program. That was a very well-designed, but also very complicated process launched by the Department of Energy. We are present also in Morocco, alongside Siemens, that is the industrial partner there, with other 850 megawatt and also a local partner. So the company is well established in Africa. and is committed to grow. Africa, has been said, has a huge potential. So in terms of resources, estimated that Africa has more than 14 terawatt of potential capacity of renewable in general, and only sub-Saharan Africa 9 terawatt. So when we come to the main dilemma of Africa, that is the dilemma of the financial possibility for the market. So there is a lot of funds, but very few funds really deployed in the market. Why? Because one of the conducive elements for attracting investment are, as has been said before by with Maximilian before, was exactly in the fact that policy needs to be implemented. Policy needs to be consistent along the period. So in order to create a conducive environment like in South Africa to deploy renewable, the government needs to maintain substantial consistency along the period, because investors need to have consistent volumes, either from IPP's point of view, but also manufacturers. Even to create a local manufacturing capability, a local skills, you need to have a continuous, stable volume of capacity that has been deployed year on year. So the South African market was pretty successful at the beginning of the launch of the RIP, let's say for the first 4 years. So now the RIP it has been launched in 2011, so 2010, 2011, almost 10 years ago, and so far as deployed 6.4 gigawatt of renewable capacity, of which 3.3 gigawatt of renewable. So that if we look at the numbers, it's not so big, considering there are other geographies like Brazil that they can deploy 8 gigawatt per year. And the reason, the main reason why this process suffers such a hiccup is mainly for political instability in the country. So substantially, there was no continuity among the former government and the subsequent government on the view of the renewable. So, and now South Africa, we know very well, because I also tested on my personally, that is facing a huge problem with energy supply. And energy supply, since a very energy intensive market, is depressing the whole economy. So renewable can be effectively a good reply, a good response to address the energy needs in the market, and also to reestablish a proper basal economy. So if we look at the supply chain risks, so the main supply chain risk that we perceive, and our experience as well in Africa, is exactly this. So substantially the lack of continuity during the period, because, and this is also for the investors. So one manufacturer or investors is required to localize, or in any case to deploy some local capacity. It has to be done assuming a certain, let's say, volume over time in order to justify the investment, in order to secure the ramp up in the knowledge and the competence creation. And if the process proceeds with hiccups and with big gaps, because the capacity that almost 2 gigawatt of capacity that is under construction of renewable capacity in South Africa now has been procured in 2014. So we're talking about 6 years ago. And so far the industry has been suffered a lot. So 2016 there were investment in the solar technology, in the wind technology. There were 2 tower manufacturers in South Africa. There were plenty of developers, but also firms that were providing services, because we need to think about renewable not only to the plants, but also the conducive industrial environment that can be let's say, deployed, supporting the industry, even in the service. So from our point of view, the main point that when a government, and in Africa mainly, define a policy, this policy has to be properly designed, has to be sustainable for the economy, has to be based on reliable figures, and then has to be, the subsequent legislation has to be implemented in a way to give continuity. Stable volumes, certainty, because at the very end, what the investor needs is not matter if we're talking about foreign investor or local investor, they need certainty. And certainty is given through policies.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And on this question of certainty, I mean, now we have the integrated resource plan from 2019, and it clearly outlines, let's say, the policy ambitions for the next 10 years with quite an impressive, you know, if you look at the numbers for wind and solar over the next 10 years, 14.4 gigawatt for wind, for instance. Is that the kind of certainty you are looking for as a company, as an investor, and so on?
Yes, as an investor, for sure, an integrated resource plan represents a milestones, not to provide, from the policy perspective, to provide certainty and let's say a forward-looking, not to the market. On the other way around, I need also to emphasize that the integrated resource plan is mainly designed on public procurement processes, where substantially the off-taker is ESCOM, that today is only bankable because there is a sovereign guarantee provided by the South African government. So what is missing in South Africa now, in my view, is a market liberalization, because there is a wide space for the CNI market that probably is even bigger than the IRP capability, that also provide not only, let's say, a deployment of renewable capacity in the market, but also attract investors that in the industry sector that today are very reluctant to invest in South Africa, because there is this unpredictable cost projection for the electricity cost in the market. And the other point is that the IRP is creating contingency liability for the country, because all the the PPAs that are signed require a sovereign guarantee. So market liberalization from a private investor point of view like us is also a way to reduce the pressure of those contingent liability on the government, because it will be based on bilateral PPAs. But in order to have unlocking of the private sector market, so this is CNI in this industry, the government has to take a bold decision on developing a proper policy, even including the secondary regulation. And so far, I have to say that the steps in this direction was very timid, where the government was very shy to deploy proper regulation in this direction.
Just a final question on that, Andrea, on the market liberalization. I mean, of course, people discuss different sort of elements that either municipalities should have a right to buy directly from a supplier, or more liberal rules for individual companies or private persons to set up solar panels and so on. What for you, what would be the key elements of such a liberalization of the market? What should
the key elements is that substantially the main barrier today for the market liberalization, I'm talking about industrial scale projects, because my company only pursues industrial scale, and we don't invest in the rooftop or small localized project. But the main key element is the possibility to have transparent and clear access to the network in order to wheel energy from a generation point to the off-taker point. And this also creates an opportunity for ESCOM, because wheeling imposes charges on ESCOM itself. So ESCOM has also suggested in that case also to perform investment in order to reinforce the network, because network is a key enabler for renewable, is a key enabler for the stability of the system.
That brings us to the end of the sort of presentations from all 5 panelists, and I think we still have a few minutes, so we can open up maybe a little broader discussion among all of you. So please indicate with your hands if you want to chip in. I think there are 2 issues that I would like to follow up on that is something that is sort of central for the debate here in South Africa. One is local content. So you don't want to create a renewable energy market where everything is imported and there's no positive incentive in the local market vis-a-vis local content. And the other issue is, of course, job creation that we have talked a little bit about previously here in this session. But would any of you like to speak a little bit to the issue of local content and job creation? What are we looking at here? What would be the benefits of this transformation? Andrea, you mark first.
I can give my view. So local content is something that physiological for renewable plants. So either in terms of, and even job creation, because in a developed country like South Africa, doesn't make any sense not to import the majority of components of labor, because there are the skills and there are capabilities. But as I said before, localizations require to be done in a way that mainly for the supply side, the localization has to impose competitiveness. So currently, the localization that has been achieved in South Africa was only related to the South African market. So it means that it is a subsidized market, an artificial market, let's say, subsidized by the fact that there is an imposition from the government to procure locally. In my view, this system is very weak in the moment in which the government is not able to guarantee any longer volumes to launch additional tenders, because at that point, the localized manufacturer is not able to use local manufacturing capability to serve other markets, because not necessarily this is competitive. This has happened, for instance, in Brazil many years ago. In Brazil, they developed this FINAME scheme in which they attracted a lot of manufacturers there. Then afterwards, there were a lot of custom duties to import goods in the country, and very high. And so also the currency that was very volatile impacted negatively on the cost of the supply. Afterwards, by chance, US imposed some restriction on Chinese components for the US market. So Brazil was, although not very cost competitive, was able to serve the American market, learning, let's say, how to be competitive. So this means that the localization has to be done at the pace and also on considering the capability of the local market. So if the government wants to localize, it's true, but the localization cannot only be relied on volumes procured through RIP programs or similar. Has to be, the market has to be widened. So it has to be wider and has to be to provide certainty for the long term. In terms of job creation, I have to say that our company so far in South Africa, only a direct employed in the Enel Green Power South Africa are more than 150 professionals, and with the different, and also being an international company, our South African colleagues are exposed to other markets. So there is also a matter of skill deployment and exposing people to different market, different experience. And the key elements. So job creation comes, in my view, from education first. So it means that the main level of the job creation that has been built today around the renewable program is semi-skilled or unskilled labor force. And in my view, there is a lot of space for the skills and professional labor force that can be deployed through process training and through the university. But this is, of course, is something that has to be properly designed. As a company, we also perform some training alongside our enterprise development programs for solar panel installators, no, in the communities. And those are the type of, in my view, the type of action that can be done in order to create the skills and the capabilities and to see South Africans also working abroad in the renewable space.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Can I invite Louise or Yannick on this issue of localization and job creation? What are we looking at? I mean, if the ambition of 14.4 gigawatt is implemented, what are we looking at in job creation and what are we looking at in local content? Where do you see possible benefits here? Louise, you want to go first?
Thank you. I think this definitely, as we all on this panel know, obviously emanates from the history of the country for a very long time. And early on in my career, we, as South Africans, and especially in my role at the IDC, we left these types of changes in the economy up to the private sector. and the private sector didn't quite respond in the way that we had hoped. And as a result, we were then in a position where we had to put clear policy guidelines in place. And, you know, I mentioned BEE earlier, that preceded a lot of the localization legislation that we currently have. We have a very strong team at the DTIC who are looking at different elements of the localization policy. I think it can be argued within the ambit of the renewables sector that we have an economic development scorecard through the REAP process that obviously looks at local content and localization as one of the elements, and it's not perfect. I think there are things that we all acknowledge are challenging. I know Yannick and myself, through our joint roles on the board of SAWIA, have been grappling with some of these issues, engaging the DTIC and having very robust debates around the required skills and also the available businesses and their capacity to meet the requirements. And as you mentioned, Ambassador, we have a very ambitious target. And if we are to meet that target, do we have the companies on the ground that can assist us to meet those targets as companies who are obliged to meet targets within the REAP program and are trying to do the right things? And I think this is some of the very robust debate that we've been having with the IPP office, with the DTIC. And thankfully, we have administrators and officials who are open to having very robust debates and looking at how we can adjust targets if targets need to be adjusted. They are open to, certainly, I know over the last few days, the OEMs have been engaged quite substantially to have robust discussions around if the targets are achievable and what needs to happen to make sure that we can achieve those moving forward.
Thank you very much, Louise. Yannick, you want to come in here?
Yes, thank you, Tobias, and thank you, Louise and Andrea, for setting the scene for this discussion. Localization, personally, I'm always happy when I can give people jobs, and I think in South Africa already we see that there is a growing industry, and this industry will grow further and generate many thousands of jobs. And I think the CSIR has done a great job of identifying the potential of the industry, and I don't have the numbers on top of my head. Concerning localization of major components, and also today the session is also about experiences from Europe. If you want to be successful in the wind industry or in the renewable energy industry, first of all, you have to, or we had to reach a state where we can compete with other energy sources such as gas and coal. In order to do that, we had to use all our powers and also utilize scale. Denmark did a very good job in that. Germany did a very good job in that. Today, the scale of the industry and the low levelized cost of electricity we have reached are not even anymore allowing the biggest OEMs such as Vestas, Siemens, Gamesa, GE to only bank on their local supply chain. Obviously, in the beginning of the industry, there was a pull. So still Siemens Gamesa is, for instance, the biggest employer in Denmark. But still, we had also to give up some of the factories to move them to more strategically viable solutions for our business, to be competitive, to be where we are, to be, to lead the energy transition. And for instance, the German market, coming back to the European example, at the moment is stalling a bit, whereas the installation rates are still, of course, much higher than South Africa. Still, OEMs such as, for instance, Enercon, who have always based their model on German supply chain, now also have to realize that they have to optimize that in order to be competitive. So Andrea was mentioning that that there is a potential for an artificial industry. I think what we were able in South Africa to do, and what we will be able to do, is to localize skills, services around the wind farms. Also, the towers will be coming. They're not competitive at the moment, I have to admit, not at least in terms of price, in terms of quality, yes, but they will get there over scale, and we will see how the market is moving. I think South Africa will have to, or we will have to support the market to specialize in certain components or services which are competitive in a global scale, because then we are not only looking at the demand pull from South Africa, but more on a you know, on an African continent basis or the surrounding countries. I think this is very important. Yeah, looking at just the mechanisms of the market globally, South Africa will not be able to become, let's say, a global exporter of wind turbine blades, simply because the push on levelized cost of electricity is so massive that that their huge scaling is required. This is not going to happen in South Africa, because South Africa alone cannot bear that. Also, the surrounding countries of South Africa are not generating the desired or the required load, rather. But South Africa has massive potential for all surrounding or industry services, and this will be sustainably localized and generate actually the industry.
Thank you very much, Jannik. I think just in Denmark, we're such a small country. We're about 1/10 of the size in number of people as South Africa, but we still have 35,000 people working in the wind industry, and even more if you look at the broader sectors of support services and suppliers and so on. So we are talking massive numbers of new people potentially working in this field if you get a robust renewables energy sector up and running. So my final question, because we are running out of time here, is to Claude. So Claude, now you hear all these international friends and partners that want to invest, to build, to make the future of South Africa green. Can you provide all the necessary technicians and skilled labor that we need to make this miracle happen?
I think we're certainly going to try it, Ambassador. We're certainly going to try. I think one of the things that I picked up as a thread through the process, through this conversation, is the fact that I think there has to be broader conversations around what can be produced locally, what can be manufactured locally, what are the basic tooling, basic equipment that can be done locally. And obviously, South Africa has a rich pool of natural resources, and we need to tap into that. We need to hone that around the delivery against the wind market. So I see that as one option. The other thing that I think which is very prevalent is the fact that when companies come in and they build local, when they put wind towers up in local constituents, then we need to engage a lot more of the local community in that space. I know that in terms of wind turbine service technicians, a lot of people from those communities don't necessarily qualify to do the technician course, for example. But we could tease people with an interest in it by letting them get involved in the local building, in the establishment, like workshop technicians, workshop assistants, just generate a lot more interest in the local community. So for one of the things we are journeying on is putting together some skills programs that would meet that particular requirement and would assist in ensuring that local labor does get produced, does get involved in the development and installation phases, but also that's a teaser for someone into the industry and for a long-term opportunity or engagement in a qualification that is fitting to the wind industry. So I think there's enough appetite, there's enough interest, and I think we just need to talk more regularly. We need to have conversations about needs, about priorities, about blockages, about what it is that we need to do to take away some of the stumbling blocks and then enable the processes for people to be developed in this particular industry. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Claude. And I think that's exactly the right point for us to conclude. We need to talk more to get rid of the obstacles, to find ways of building capacity, to get the right investors into the South African market. I think the session today is a start, and I want to thank all of you individually. Thank you, Maximilian. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Claude. Thank you, Jannik, and thank you, Andrea, for really, I think, enlightening all of us about what some of the obstacles are, but certainly also underlining there's a huge potential here. There's a huge potential for a green, renewable energy future for South Africa. And I know that you, as well as us and the Team EU, Team Europe will be a strong partner and friend in making that future happen. So thank you all for participating today. Thank you very much to everyone who listened to our session today. And I wish all of you the best of luck in making this green future a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to participate in this session.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it too.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.